This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post, coming to you from the Fort Hall School of Government in Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. We also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 20th of April, 2022, and I am Miss K.
I am JM.
And I am GK. In case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, now teachers want 16,000 fees hike. The Standard, Deep State, Matiang'i attacks Ruto, and in the Star, CS Matiang'i attacks Ruto, tells DP to quit, and other stories. And in People Daily, Nairobi seat stirs Azimio bosses. So quite a mixed bag, but Deep State doing something there.
Yeah.
Ms. K.
Okay, today I'd like to discuss the deadline for the nomination of deputy presidential candidates. So on 20th January 2022, IEBC gazetted regulations on the critical timelines for the presidential, parliamentary, gubernatorial, and county assembly elections. The regulations specify the deadlines for key milestones in the electoral cycle, such as the submission of party membership lists, the timeline for party primaries, the deadline for the submission of nominated candidates, the time frame for the campaign period, and finally, and most importantly, the date of the general election. So in our view, these IEBC regulations are as clear as mud. They are confusing, contradictory, and difficult to understand. They beg more questions than give answers. Allow me to elaborate using the provisions on the nomination of deputy presidential candidates.
Yeah.
So according to Part F of the regulations on the presidential elections, the deadline for the submission to IEBC of the name of the person nominated to contest in the presidential election is Thursday, 28th April. That is next Thursday. This gives both Azimio and Kenya Kwanza exactly 1 week to pick the coalition running mate.
Wow.
However, Part L of the regulations also states that the days for the nomination of political party candidates and independent candidates for the presidential election shall be between Sunday, 29th May 2022 and Monday, 6th June 2022. This gives Azimio and Kenya Kwanza about 2 months to pick the coalition running mate.
Interesting.
So to add to the confusion, nomination by the party is not enough to qualify a person to stand for election as president. According to the Constitution, Article 137(1)(d) to be precise, that to qualify for nomination as a presidential candidate, you must be nominated by at least 2,000 voters from a majority of the counties. That's about 24 counties.
Yeah.
In those contradictory IEBC regulations, the deadline for the submission of the names, signatures, and IDs of those 2,000 voters in 24 counties is Monday, May 23rd. Now, we know for a fact that Raila and Ruto are the presidential candidates. And Article 148 of the Constitution says that there shall be no separate nomination process for the deputy president. This means that the IEBC deadlines for the nomination of Raila and Ruto are the same deadlines for the nomination of their running mates. The question then is this. When must Raila and Ruto submit the names of their running mates to IEBC? Is the deadline for the nomination of deputy presidential candidates April 8th, next week?
20th, yeah.
Is it 23rd of May? Or is the absolute deadline 6th June? It's not clear. And in our view, someone should ask IEBC or the courts to clarify this nomination confusion, even just to buy time for Raila and Ruto to make this critical decision.
And a critical decision it will be.
Yes, now if we're going with the 28th, what happens if both Raila and Ruto do not announce a Kikuyu running mate? This, ladies and gentlemen, is a high probability, especially because Kikuyus are behaving abnormally. How will Gema respond? Gema will do one of three things, my hypothesis. First, they could force a runoff. Let me explain why before I explain how. Since before we gained independence, Kikuyus have been conditioned to at least have the number 1 or number 2 position in the executive. Come what may, it must always be one or the other. Even in the Nyayo era, Moi always had a Kikuyu for vice president. In other words, Gema has never known otherwise. But the other reason why they should force a runoff in this eventuality is, to repeat the Kalonzo Musyoka formula of 2007, where Kambas backed their man in round one and on that basis negotiated for a post-election coalition agreement. Now, on to how Gema could force a runoff. Simple, by backing an independent presidential candidate.
Interesting.
Gema's 4.6 million voters, if bundled together, could be a complication to both Raila and Ruto. Hear me out. From our projections, accounting for all ethnic groups across Kenya, a Raila and Kalonzo ticket would fetch 7.1 million votes. A Ruto MUDAVADI ticket would fetch about 3.9 million votes. And Gema's independent candidate, the 4.6 million, with a total projected voter turnout of about 15.7 million. 50% plus 1 equals about 7.8 million votes. Now, none of those candidates, as you can see, would be able to reach that threshold. And that is how Kikuyus could engineer a runoff. And once they get to round 2, then they would ask themselves the question, between supporting Ruto, who betrayed us at the 11th hour, and supporting Baba, who has been courting us not through the back door like William Ruto has been doing, but through Uhuru Kenyatta, whom are we safer with? And the answer to that question is obvious. It will be Baba. The second option that Gema could explore if Raila and Ruto do not nominate a Kikuyu running mate, simple, boycott the presidential election. And they will do this simply because there won't be any seat worth defending. In this case, Ruto will lose big time and Raila will gain significantly, and he'll gain on 2 accounts: fewer votes for Ruto and a lower voter threshold, since voter turnout in Central, maybe even as low as 66%, as was the case in 2002. Option number 3 that Gema could explore if one of their own is not nominated for deputy is an extreme option. It is the extra-legal option that Baba Man took in 2017 when he saw himself in as the people's president. And here, I want to remind you that an extreme option remains a possibility because Gema has never not had a representative in the executive. But then again, Kikuyus, even if we don't get the number 2 position in this election, it's really never that serious. We will live to fight another day.
We'll fight another day, indeed. So, the most prominent Kikuyu we know, President Kenyatta, speaking today, told us that what the country needs is problem solvers, not just people identifying the problems Kenya has.
This country needs problem solvers, not problem talkers. Kuongea, unaongea pale kwa soko, unalia. Sasa mwananchi anakuangalia anasema, sasa unataka mimi nifanye namna gani? Unataka mimi nifanye namna gani? We need people who are willing and committed to providing solutions, because problems will never end.
This country needs problem solvers, not problem talkers, as he told us. And it got me thinking, like most politicians, Ruto is the biggest problem seller. He has done such a good job of bundling many small issues that the country is dealing with into one big problem that looks insurmountable and terrifying. But today, guys, I want to give Ruto some props for a simple reason. The other day, he quipped that taking a selfie with him in Karen was no guarantee for nomination, and that the ground would be the ultimate determinant. It signaled to me that he was reading the mood of the country. Those who thought they were sure of nomination in UDA were shown dust, such as Alfred Gita. Others, like Richard Ngatia across the divide, thought that money would unlock the way for them, and it did not. Now, UDA's shambolic nomination was a warning shot to the old guard, the elite, and to the other parties. It was a lesson to not expect personal connections with the deep state to put them in power. It is also a wake-up call to those expecting Uhuru to campaign for them. Uhuru is likely not to do retail politics from county to county. He already outlined the big picture for Kenyans. What more do you need? Therefore, I want to dedicate a book to politicians by Andrew Grove. It's called Only the Paranoid Survive. A good politician must expose him or herself to the winds of change, and to do so constantly. So if JM is right and no one from the mountain is made running mate, only a healthy dose of paranoia will make sure they at least get a seat at the table.
That's right.
Raila too must become paranoid, for the deep state is a criminal enterprise. It cannot be trusted to make sure he is the 5th president of the republic. So as 2022 shapes up to be the most peculiar election year, remember this: everything is less dangerous if people develop some self-awareness. And the paranoid know that it is the people in the trenches that are usually in touch with the impending changes early. Or are they? Mine is just food for thought. So guys, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines. We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? Is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
Yeah.
Personally, I was not moved by any of them.
Neither was I.
Neither was I.
And I suggest that we're going to toss them. Guys, do better. On a day where we had no winning headlines, have a lovely evening. Please find me on Twitter, find JM.
Yes, on Maina wa Kangema on TikTok.
And at J Kambuni on Twitter.
There we go.